welcome to another episode of the Dragon Yawn. I'm Seafood Mike.
I'm Robert Aldrich.
And we're coming to you from from the mats and the location of Tactical Kung Fu and Mixed Martial Arts, KR sponsors for this video podcast. We're actually going from a different side, okay, so we got a different background, alright? This is a cage, it's pretty cool. Remember, Tactical Kung Fu and Mixed Martial Arts, they have all kinds of different martial arts that you can take, okay, every range of combat you can think of, weapons, stand-up, grappling, sport, self-defense, just regular fitness, because that's fun, right? Got it all, okay, and full-time instructor, and one of the only places in the world, or actually the only place in the world, that not only features a community of people that you will never find anywhere else, but me, okay? Now, real quick, before we actually get into Kung Fu Panda 2, which is what we're talking about today, I want to reiterate another thing we got here. Robert is a writer.
It's true.
Yes.
Yes.
Robert, tell them about your stuff.
My website, teachthesky.com. My books, Rokaiju, about a young woman who saves the world through the power of rock and roll and a giant lizard. Also, Proton, about a cosplayer who gets superpowers. Lots of fun stuff. Teachthesky.com. All the books are available through your favorite book available resource, which means Amazon.
Pretty much. You can find anything on Amazon for the most part.
Yay.
Except for me!
It's true.
Yeah, but you
Give it a minute.
Yeah. They're gonna put me all over Amazon.
Some kind of fun drone delivery, Mike.
Yeah, I know.
That'd be nice.
Yeah, maybe. You know, we'll figure it out. We'll make it happen. If you want it to happen, let us know in the comments below. Also, I feel like you should come in just a little bit. Yes, there we go. See, hey.
There we go.
It's a right framing for the shot.
It's true. Yeah.
Yeah.
We're on like
exercise balls.
Yeah, exercise ball. So it's real
balls,
easy
so
to
it's
kind
like
of.
it bounces.
Yeah. All right then.
Just bouncing up and down.
Exactly.
Kung
Kung Fu Panda 2.
Fu Panda 2.
This one I did not watch hours ago. This one I watched yesterday.
He's getting better, folks.
I try.
He's getting a whole lot better.
Yes.
And I did kind of have to bribe him too, because like you.
You didn't bribe. You extorted. There's a difference. But I did
Potato.
I did enjoy it quite a bit. I was very excited to watch this one because the first one was so very good, and this one is really, really there.
It's good, but in different reasons. Okay. First, let's talk a little bit about the actual movie and the production of it. It came out in 2011. Okay, and 2011 is a very stacked year. I mean, you can practically name a franchise. They came out with a sequel. Okay, it's like I think Mission Impossible came off a sequel.
Yep.
We got Sherlock Holmes. We've got the Twilight series. Harry Potter came out with one. Fast and the Furious came out with one.
I think one of the
Pirates of the Caribbean.
Yeah, I think one of the Transformers also came out that year.
That was the second highest grossing film that year.
Good.
Yeah, I love it, man.
I'm glad.
I love. That's the only franchise of talking alien robots. I think we even had this conversation before.
Oh,
yeah.
I don't know, man. You haven't seen the Jason Bourne movies.
I did see the Jason Bourne.
I stand by my case.
He's
not human, that's for sure.
But he's not a talking alien robot that transforms into something. Unless he did it off camera.
Transforms into a charisma sink.
And speaking of the Bourne films,
yeah,
I do want to reiterate, actually not reiterate, but talk about something specifically that we totally forgot about the last time. And that was like the thing that I was the most excited to talk about, and I completely forgot because that's how my brain works, right? Had cancer and 2 surgeries, so, you know, it doesn't really work as well sometimes. But other times it's great. Okay?
True.
Anyways, I want to talk about the music of Kung Fu Panda, the entire franchise.
Gorgeous.
It's done by Hans Zimmer and John Powell.
If you don't know who Hans Zimmer is, I feel very bad for you. He is one of the most talented, one of the hardest working, and most prodigious composers working in cinema today. He is phenomenal. I guarantee you one of your 5 favorite films, he did the music for.
He actually did 5 films in 2011 just alone. I mean, but John Powell, going back to him real quick, in the Bourne movies, if you don't know who John Powell is, he actually works with Hans Zimmer in his production company, which is why he's kind of paired with him a lot, and he shares the credit for the Kung Fu Panda score. Now, John Powell is known as the composer for the Bourne films, all the ones that had Matt Damon in them. Okay, there was one that didn't have Matt Damon in it, and he didn't do that composition, but he did the other one. So he's a very good composer in his own right. But he worked with Hans Zimmer in this one. Hans Zimmer does a lot of collaboration. He likes to collaborate. In fact, he tries to give as much credit to other people as he can. I think on one film he did, he shared the credit for like 30 other people.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he's just a really cool guy, but he's a very good music composer. I freaking love him.
Mm-hmm.
Hands down, is the best. He not only just writes really good music, but he is able to tell a story. In fact, one of the, like, early on in his career, he did the composition for The Thin Red Line. Have you ever seen that film? Now, what makes that film unique is that basically before any of it was shot, he scored the film. Now, normally it's the other way around. Normally it's like, okay, they finish the film, they give it to the composer, and then the composer does music for it, right? This way, he was given a script and told, hey, write a whole bunch of music to, I guess, identify these certain tones and feelings and emotions that they're trying to evolve. And then they shot to match that. I mean, he did something like 6 hours of music for that film. And some of the stuff he did is has laid the foundation for what other composers do. Like in editing, when they don't have the composition ready, they use some of his stuff from that film as kind of places. So like, hey, we're going to put this in place just so we get an idea of what the music is going to be like.
To further along with how very competent and capable he is, he worked extensively. Hans Zimmer did the music for the Dark Knight trilogy with Christopher Nolan. When he was doing, at least with Batman Begins, and I believe maybe with The Dark Knight as well, he worked with another composer in his production crew, and they divided it right down the line. He did the Batman music, and his partner was doing the Bruce Wayne music. So you had two very different voices in the musical representation in the film for that very reason, to try to capture the dichotomy of the character. He is very dedicated to the idea that he's not a classical composer whose music is used in film, as many do operate under. He very much is a film composer, which seems to be a rare thing.
It's not so much
for them to have that mentality.
Classical composer. It's actually because if you're getting to a lot of orchestral music like I have, there are different eras, and what he does is not what would be called classical. He does romantic, so he's in more than romantic era music. So he's the best modern day example of a romantic era composer, orchestral composer, and so he's able to convey words and feelings and emotions and pictures through sound, and it's amazing. And it was funny you mentioned the Dark Knight series, because the thing is, Hans Zimmer, if you follow his career like I do, because I'm a geek, a lot of what he does in that film, he laid the groundwork in The Thin Red Line. You can see some of the same themes that he picks up and some of the same things that he uses. Same thing where he did the soundtrack for Gladiator. In Gladiator, he has this kind of hero theme that he perfected in the Pirates of the Caribbean soundtrack later on, and I freaking love that soundtrack. Now, the difference in those movies is that Pirates of the Caribbean was much lighter in tone than Gladiator, and so his theme, his hero theme, if you will, fit that movie so much better than it did Gladiator, which is why I used it, and it was amazing. Absolutely, hands down amazing. It's probably, I think, number 3 is one of my best, most favorite compositions ever, because then everything that he laid the groundwork for in the previous films just comes together and collides and finishes and crescendos.
Amazing.
I absolutely love that film. It's one of those things where, like, if you can listen to the music and call into your mind the scene that is portraying, that is the mark of a good song for me. Come this way. He keeps like moving.
I'm actually kind of trying to avoid the mouse indicator.
Let me move the mouse.
Oh, there we go. Okay, so much better. There we go.
Yeah, you still haven't moved over that much.
I understand, but because I'm nervous. The mouse is going to come back. Anyway, but Hans Zimmer does the work in Kung Fu Panda 2, and he paired it off with John Powell, and it's beautifully evocative, and it's ethnically diverse too, which is also really, really neat. A lot of musicians will have their chosen instruments that they want to work with. these two embraced the reed flute. They just did a phenomenal job.
I forgot what that. There was a particular type of instrument that they incorporated in one of the fight scenes.
The Chinese guitar.
Yeah, and that was basically like the Chinese version of a mandolin. It's a folk music instrument. It was amazingly cultural accurate type thing that they use, and again they incorporated that music into the fight scenes, right? So it wasn't like they had the fight scenes first. It's like, okay, we're gonna have this beat, we're gonna have that, we're gonna put it all together, and more so I think than in the first film, they used music to help tell the story. And music was a big part of the second film. So there's actually a lot of really good stuff going on in this film. It was let's see, it was directed by, let's see if I can pronounce it right, Jennifer Nelson. I have a cheat sheet in front of me, so I like the first and last name's great, but I don't know about the middle name. She actually made her directorial debut in this film, and I think she did a very good job considering it was her first thematic directorial debut. Now,
such dynamic work.
Now, she wasn't her first time directing. She actually directed the first sequence, the opening sequence of the first film, and she was the lead storyboard artist for that film, which is why she can pick up on this one so very well. Now, because he was a storyboard artist, right, this film is a lot more visually oriented than the previous film. And it shows, like, the animation is amazing. There's actually 3 different types of animation. There is the 3D animation that we're used to. There is the anime type of animation that they use. And there's a third one now. There's a shadow puppet animation. And that was really cool. But the animation there is just absolutely superb. In fact, they were able to do things with that animation with computers that they just literally physically couldn't do years before. There's only about a 3-year difference between when these movies came out. There's a difference in budget. There's about, what's kind of funny, there's a $30 million budget increase, right? When you look at the numbers of like box office gross, there's only about a $30 million increase from so they like netted the same amount of profit, which is really good when like you're getting $600,000 or 600 million, whatever. Numbers, yay!
Like they got a $30 million increase. Like, oh, only a $30 million?
Yeah. So
I'd love only a $30 million increase.
Right,
hell, I'd take a $30 increase. The movie is visually very dynamic, and it hangs heavily on that. There is significantly less dialogue in this movie than in the previous movie, but that's not lacking. That's not a weakness on the part. It's them focusing so much on the visual storytelling. In the previous review that we did for Kung Fu Panda 1, which is probably up here, or there's a link somewhere to that over here, which you should watch if you haven't seen it yet.
Yes.
We talked about Angelina Jolie, who plays Tigress.
She had a bigger role in this.
She did, but I don't think she had any extra lines. I think they used Angelina Jolie to better effect. I think she had a better understanding of the character that she was playing.
Yeah, that's true.
And so Tigress is much more prominent and much more present, but I don't think she has any additional screen time. I don't think she has any additional dialogue from the first movie. They just use her better. Now that we've kind of gotten the backstory out of the way, now that we've gotten the who are these characters out of the way, they're able to really have a bigger presence. Mantis is more prominent in the film. Monkey is more prominent.
Mantis is actually a character we forgot to mention last time.
I'm scratching my foot.
Scratch it later.
Okay.
Mantis is played by Seth Rogen, and a lot of his lines in the first film he actually ad-libbed. So he's a phenomenal actor, and I feel like as much as we name-dropped all the other actors in the last one, we didn't talk about him at all, and he really added a whole lot extra element to that particular character.
So interesting note about Seth Rogen. He trained at the Jewish Cultural Center in New York City, and he studied karate. I don't remember what kind of karate he did, but it was because they were used to dealing with young Jewish boys who were getting bullied at school. It was hardcore punch them in the nuts, box their ears, kind of karate and everything. And so apparently he competed in a tournament for karate and got completely disqualified in a couple of minutes because he was so used to like really rough and tumble, true protect yourself karate.
And I know so many people who have won tournaments because the other guy hit them so hard they got disqualified. Yeah. So when you learn the details behind why they won, you're like, you shouldn't be proud of that.
Yeah, no, not at all.
But yeah, that's actually really funny, man. Real quick, going back to the fact that the movie was made by a former storyboard artist. Like I said, it's awesome. They didn't use the matte painting as much as they did in the last film. I kind of wish they would. That was an aesthetic that I really loved. But they wanted to show off what they could do with a computer, you know, which is still very good. I mean, there's a lot of lighting. A lot of the scenes are backlit. There's a lot of shadows in it. And it's the kind of things that you wouldn't notice unless you were looking for them. And I was watching the credits, and there's probably as many lighting guys on that film as there are animators. It's amazing. And what they did with the shadows and with the lights is nothing short of awesome. So, like, I can't praise that enough. That being said, I feel like just a little bit that the movie is a little bit too dark as far as the color palette is concerned. And, you know, they actually, I think a guy on YouTube did a thing where he took a scene from the Man of Steel movie and he brightened it up and played the two side by side, and like just by brightening just a little bit made it so much more like hopeful and enjoyable kind of thing. And so I think this movie would have benefited more if it was just a little bit brighter.
What are you talking about? A movie about like genocide wasn't bright enough?
I mean, this movie technically also has that in there.
That's what I'm talking about. Yeah,
I mean,
like Shen goes on a tear, and I was not prepared. So Shen is played by Gary Oldman, who might be one of the best actors working today.
It's down.
And it is really staggering how we went from evil, nefarious, twist mustache bad guy from the first movie to genocidal maniac in this film.
Yeah, he's pretty bad.
Yeah, this is not just a visually dark film. This is a narratively dark film, which might be a little unsettling to some audience members.
Yeah,
FYI.
I don't think they quite had their audience in mind when they made this. Being storyboard artists, listening to the commentary, I very much felt like they were like, "Hey, we did this because it's cool." Like when I listened to the other commentary, the directors very much praised all the people who were involved in making it and isolated and talked about why they did stuff. When I listened to this one, it wasn't just the director, it was the producer, it was the fight choreography, it was the I think one of the lead animators. There's 4 people, and for the most part all they did was talk about the stuff that they did and what they liked, and they didn't talk about why they did it. And I was kind of like, why did you do this? Why did you use the 3D rendering versus the matte painting, which clearly looked awesome? Oh, on a different note, I'm going to sideway. Fight scenes, freaking phenomenal. Hands down, some of the best fight scenes ever because of the processing power of the computers. They were able to do multiple fights at the same time, and Furious 5 were able to fight as a team, right? And so like you can watch those fight scenes over and over and focus on just a different character in the background, and there is something new to it every single time. They're so layered and so beautifully well done.
And that was one of the things that stood out to me immediately in this movie versus the previous one, is the emphasis on the teamwork. This really is not Poe and the Furious 5, Fantastic 5, whatever they were called.
Furious 5.
They are a team. There's a lot of Viper and Mantis and Crane. Really, their presence in the film is not necessarily individual scenes, but their role in connecting the fights. And the emphasis on teamwork of the 6 Kung Fu masters fighting together is beautifully captured. This is not Poe alone. This is Poe as part of a team, and it builds the family dynamic that is so strong to the narrative of the story.
Yeah, family is a big part of it. Although there are 3 in going back to the production, so we haven't gotten the meat of the story just yet. We're still on the production side of things. The production did take less time and I feel like it could have benefited more from a longer amount of time. In fact, at the very end of it, Guillermo del Toro was brought in, and he's got a credit as a creative consultant, right? But he wasn't there long enough to be anything else. Like he could have been a producer or anything like that. But like he's a really good storyteller, and he did point out certain things because he's like, hey, I understand you guys are coming from the artistic background, coming from the storyboard artist kind of deal. You don't quite know the narrative thing about actual movie making and filmmaking. You know, they did put stuff in there just because it looked cool, right? And it is a kind of a testament to some of their writing ability. They were able to shoehorn in things and make it work. But he was there, and they did a couple of goofs, right? There was a scene where Tigress mentioned that she punched the ironwood trees out by the temple, and anybody who knows anything about the plants in China, no ironwood trees. That could have been a simple thing because there is iron palm techniques. It could have been just been like I hit sand kind of thing or whatever like that. Same thing with gorillas. That was a huge gaffe. There's never been any gorillas in there. There have been rhinos. In ancient China, they had rhinos. They don't have them now, but they had rhinos. Didn't have gorillas. So, like, I think they just put them in there because they're like, oh, these guys look cool on screen, big guys, and we utilize them. The only other thing that I found amazing, because the director is Chinese, and so it has to do with the color palette. They used color as a storytelling motif, just like in the first one, but they used the color red to associate with the bad guy. And black, definitely yes. White, yes. In fact, the peacock, he's all white for the most part. He's got these red tail feathers.
That's Gary Oldman, by the way.
Yes, Gary Oldman. It's the peacock, Lord Shin. But he was always, there's red in every single scene that he did. And he was always either backlit by red or everything was very red. And in China, red is not the color you associate with bad stuff. I mean, it's the color for joy and happiness, right? So I don't know why they made that decision because it's kind of confusing as far as something that takes place in China, right? In fact, people wear red at weddings, okay? They don't wear white because white is associated with death. You wear white at funerals, which means it's appropriate for Lord Shin. But having him backlit, I mean, it visually in America it looks cool, but red would not have been my choice.
Yeah.
I would have stuck with the same kind of color scheme that they did in the first film, where I think they used blue for the bad guy.
Blue, white, and gray. Yeah.
Yeah. So white still.
Because he was a white tiger.
Yeah. Oh no, he was a leopard.
Oh, is he a leopard? I thought it was a white tiger.
No, wasn't a white tiger. He's a snow leopard.
That's just a white tiger that's got a knee problem.
He just doesn't have stripes. He has spots.
Yeah, whatever.
But
Spots are stripes with commitment issues.
All right, so that's like the production side of it. Let's go into the story. And again, I want to mention Gary Oldman. We've mentioned the Seth Rogen. The main character, one of the main characters who's very pivotal to the plot, is the soothsayer, who is played by Michelle Yeoh, and she does a good job. In fact, she actually kind of takes the place of Oogway as far as like the wisdom that is imparted in this film, and she definitely progresses it along.
She's a belligerent little ox.
Yeah, I know. Oh, she's a
water buffalo.
Goat.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, she's a goat. She doesn't have the credit as a goat, but she has the credit as soothsayer. But she definitely has she plays the kind of Oogway part. What I found interesting story-wise is that it's really no different than the first one in how it progresses. Because in the first one, you have Oogway telling Shifu that Tai Lung's going to escape. And he believes it, and his actions actually cause Tai Lung to escape. In this one, Soothsayer tells Shen that Panda's going to defeat him, and his actions to prevent that calls the Panda to come and defeat him. Same thing, just from two different perspectives.
Right.
It very much follows that whole someone meets their destiny on the road they take to avoid it, right? Is that what you picked up from?
Totally.
Yeah, and so it's right there. So it's not anything new, it's just different, which kind of is how you make a really good sequel. So a lot of people, I don't think, would have picked up on that, especially if your core audience is like 7-year-olds. Okay. And so...
Says the 230-somethings talking about the film.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Who probably have watched it more than some 7-year-olds.
Yeah.
They did have a couple cameos in the film. Great cameos. Master Croc is played by the one and only Jean-Claude Van Damme, and he even does the split, you know, so he informed what the character does. So he's playing a crocodile.
He's playing against type. He's a very small role. He contributes very little to the narrative, but there is some real flavor to it. At one point, they're in jail and they're fighting over the prison cell, and he's like, "I get the top bunk." It's just some really fun dialogue from him.
Yeah.
I get the impression he's a very goofy guy.
I think, yeah, well, I watched the special features, and yeah, he is a goofy guy who almost kicked the camera at one point because he was playing around. He was doing like this number and stuff like that. But being a martial artist, he knows the distance, so like, but it very much looked like, oh, he's about to kick the camera. You know, I can see the cameraman going, oh crap. And so, and that was in the sound studio, man. This was a little box. The guy you played opposite, who played Master Ox, is Dennis
Haysbert.
He's a really good actor. A lot of people will know him as the Allstate guy. He's in a lot of commercials.
Pedro Serrano from Major League movies. He was the president, not Barack Obama, in one of the 24 seasons with the Jack Bauer. I can't remember the actor's name. Sutherland.
Yeah, I was about to say he's
Sutherland.
a Sutherland. There's like 2 of them. 3 of them, actually. Right? Isn't there a 3rd?
I'm not aware of.
Well, he's not famous. That's the thing.
Anyway, he's got a very distinctive voice, and he brings his voice acting A game to it because he's really excellent. And Master Ox plays kind of a contemporary to Master Shifu. With a little bit more militaristic base rather than a philosophical base. And rescuing Master Ox and Master Croc is the goal of the mission originally, but when they find them, they discover that they're in Poe and the Furious Five, discover that there are circumstances that they were not prepared for coming into face Shin. And we don't want to spoil too terribly much.
I was about to say, I should indicate that we are going to spoil this film.
In that case.
Yeah, we're totally... They came out in 2011.
I don't know what the statute of limitation is on spoilers.
Our spoiler says you should have watched this film in 2011 or sometime before this podcast.
Yeah, or like me, at least last night.
Yeah, but see, we're not really spoiling that much because it's such a visual-oriented film. There's a lot of visual storytelling. There's a lot of music that helps tell the story. Okay?
Gorgeous music.
So it's a fun watch. And like I said, the fight scenes are amazing.
And it's got one of the things I really like about this movie, much like the previous one, is the applicability of it. Growing up with like kung fu movies and Shaw Brothers films and everything, their take on Buddhist philosophy and Zen philosophy is often very artificial. This felt much more practical, which I attributed to the humor. The lessons of the first movie, you meet your destiny on the road you take to avoid it. It's much more tangible in these films because Poe is so much more believable as a hero because he is a lovable goof. The notion of the finding inner peace, they make it functional. It's not as transformative. It's not some magical event that occurs. It's just a thing that you have to do, but it also how you do it. They demonstrate that.
Yeah, they mentioned that finding inner peace is something that you can do one of 2 ways. You can either meditate for years in a cave, isolated, alone from most people, and I don't know anyone who does that, or you can find inner peace through adversity, which is how most people get it. And there was a great scene where Master Shifu was talking about the day that Poe was picked as the Dragon Warrior, and he just goes on like that was a terrible day.
Worst day of my life.
It's like horrible, and like he even shivers at the thought of it. It's really kind of funny. I mean, there are lots of funny beats that I think I really wish there were more. There were a couple of them. Like honestly, the funniest moment in the entire film for me was when Poe's it's in the 3rd act, it's towards the end. Poe's on the rooftop, all right, and he's looking down at these boats. They're on a river, and he starts to give this awesome monologue about kung fu and how he's going to defeat them and 3 to 5 and all like that. And then they come back down to Shin. He's on the boat going, "What?"
I can't hear you because he's half a mile away.
Yeah, it's absolutely absurdly funny. I laugh every single time. Little gags like that. But I wish they would have had more. I wish that they had more dialogue. Okay, more moments where the things could come through, because they used, in the first film they talked about belief. Belief was a huge theme. In this film they substitute the word choice for belief. So it's about the same deal. The difference in my mind is that a choice can be a one-time thing, whereas a belief is like, I'm choosing all the time. I'm constantly choosing to believe this type of thing to make this happen. And so they talk about choice and how your beginning doesn't define you, doesn't make your ending happen. It's up to you. It's up to your choice. It's your personal choice. And I really wish that was something that was hammered home, because that's a big thing in my eye. Like, I did economics, and economics for me, I define it as the mathematics behind choice, right? And I make certain assumptions to make those choices logical and work out as far as prediction and stuff like that. So choice is a very big thing. You can either choose to look at something very bad or choose to look at something very good. Like, I could choose to look at nothing but the bad stuff in this film and it'd be a terrible film. I'd be wrong, because it's a good film, right? And it clearly made a whole bunch of money and won awards, and visually it's amazing, right? But I look at positive. Everything could always be better. Everything could always be worse. It's all how you look at it. It's always how you choose to look at that. For me, choice is a very big thing. It's a very powerful thing. People have literally fought and died for your choice. It's something not to be undersold. And I really wish they would have just...
Well, talking about the things that I feel that the film would have benefited from more is there's a B plot to this, which is learning about Poe's backstory, or history as it is. In the first movie, we learned that Poe was adopted and was raised by his the owner of a restaurant, Mr. Ping.
A goose.
Yeah, a goose, played by the wonderful James Hong, I believe.
Yeah.
And he, this movie plays on that, but we get a backstory that Poe's people were being persecuted and killed by Emperor Shen. Lord Shen, excuse me.
He's not an emperor.
And Poe was abandoned by his parents in order to save him, because they were being hunted down. And that's how Mr. Ping came across little baby Poe and raised him as his own. And they don't really ever lean into the idea of adopted parents still being parents. Poe spends a lot of time talking about wondering who I am and who were my parents, and they only a couple of times acknowledge that in kind of Guardians of the Galaxy 2 style, the who gave birth to you is not necessarily who your parents are. And they come back to it at the end where he says, who are you? I'm my father's son, which is really emotional and really moving. But I felt like they could have spent some more time with, I am going to find the source of this mystery, and I want to unravel this mystery, but it's not going to change that you are my dad.
Right.
And I feel like that could have been clearer.
They actually build on that and expand upon it more in the third film.
Okay.
So this film kind of lays a lot of the tracks that were finished off in the next film, and it actually builds upon a lot of things that were set up in the first film. In fact, a lot of the elements in this film were borrowed from stuff that wasn't used in the last film. Again, being a storyboard artist, they had blocked out segments and scenes that they didn't use, and so they were like, okay, we can use this here because this fits what we're trying to do. And so this was not a movie where they had script first and then shot things to match it. It was kind of like, okay, we have a bunch of scenes that are really cool, let's put them together and make a script as we go. This is filmmaking at its finest, because they had next to nothing when they started. They had a budget and they had a couple scenes and an idea of where they wanted to go, and then they made a film in the process. And so there are a lot of films that are actually made like this. There are films that are shot before the script is even finished. They're like, okay, we've got the first half, so we know where we can start. We'll make it up as we go along and finish it before we have to finish filming.
Mm-hmm.
That happens a lot, and sometimes it doesn't happen. That's why you get the delays, which are more like people know about that now thanks to like social media and stuff like that. Back in the day, nobody knew about that. Nobody cared if the movie was delayed or not, and so but they expect that hard line, like, hey, it's coming out now, kind of thing.
And before you think we're ragging on this method of filmmaking, understand that a lot of filmmaking is going to be chemistry, not necessarily between your actors, but between your production staff, your crew, and all of that kind of thing. Having the writing not completed helps you to have some fluidity to the storytelling. If these actors have far more chemistry than you anticipated, being able to sculpt the story a little bit to cater to that's the path to greatness. So this is not necessarily some kind of flawed method. This is a very valid storytelling method.
Yeah, and you have to remember, the actors did add stuff to their characters, and when you have a character-based story, for the most part, it's going to be based on what they bring to the table. Like I said, in the first film, people like Seth Rogen, they added a whole lot to Mantis that really wasn't even there. Like, I think even Angelina Jolie brought a different aspect to Tigress, and same thing with Jack Black. Jack Black really made Poe. Like, the Poe that you see in the first film, it was not the Poe that was on page. It's not the one, there's not the concept of it. What he did in that sound studio before they even started filming, they were like, oh, we're going to make Poe this. This is Poe. This is the way it should be. Right. And so that's what they modeled everything after. But I definitely love this. Which,
as a writer, like, kills me inside a little bit. Like, no, I wrote that character. You did not bring them to life. But that's another story.
I mean, well, you can develop. So, like, some people just develop really good characters and use that as a way to drive the story. They create like a problem and then put these characters in mix and use that to drive the story along. Correct me if I'm wrong.
No, I just mean, and it's, again, that's where the collaborative element of filmmaking comes. We think of filmmaking as being a static thing. What goes up on the screen is the result of a script and a shot schedule and all of that. It's not. It's the result of, what's it called? An entire story arc of Breaking Bad was the result of the location team finding a house that had like this little water sluice in the desert. And they were like, oh, we've got to set a scene here. And so there was this whole story arc about, I think it was the white nationalists or something that they were dealing with in one of the middle seasons, and it was just because they found this like graded sluice, and they were like, "Oh, we're gonna do something with this."
Yeah, well, they were going back to that visual storytelling. They're like, "This looks cool. We're gonna add this thing because it's a great scene, and it just fits with what they're trying to do." Yeah. So they have a lot of that. They're like, "Okay, we're gonna have this thing because it looks cool to have like cannonballs being flung at you, or whatever." Yeah. And so a lot of those things were added, like even like when the arrows of fire were being shot at people, that as they were making, they were like, I want to add more arrows here. Let's put one there because that looks great. The rickshaw chase scene where, and so probably as much as I absolutely hate commentaries, I watched it again, and the funniest moment in the commentary when a bunch of visual artists are talking about in that scene, they hide into a dragon costume, and they're like 4 or 5 of them can fit in there, and they're running along. And at one point, this wolf comes up and he chomps on them, pulls them in, they beat him up, and then poop him out. And so from the outside, they have a shot of a little bunny looking at this dragon. It looks like the dragon ate him,
digested
him, and pooped him out. And so the funny part for me is when I heard a bunch of people talking about and spending like 2 minutes talking about the different ways in which you can poop, right? Because like it's a blink and you'll miss it moment, but they put way too much time into how this guy was gonna look when he got pooped out. So they were talking about the different textures of poop. And like whether or not it should be hard or soft, or like as he come out, it was absolutely the most hilarious. I'm getting cracked up now just thinking about it. But like grown people,
scatological arts are delightful.
They had almost an argument about what the poop should look like. That progress into like they couldn't decide, and so that's why there's another moment where like they eat a bunch of guys and poop them out because they wanted to, poop out and get every different type of poop that you can think of. But like I said, it's a blink and you'll miss moment, so like it's not as funny as the commentary about it because the commentary was absolutely ridiculous. Grown people talking about the different types of poop, but again, artists, okay? Visual artists, and they had to get that right for whatever reason, I don't know.
Hey, commitment to your excellence.
Yeah, but blink and you'll miss a moment. All right, so last thing about the storytelling, after watching it several times, I put my analyzing cap on.
Several. You're going to say that that's the one you want. It's not several dozen, not several hundred, several. Okay, all right.
Yes. Well, I didn't analyze it several times.
Oh, okay.
Like I analyzed it for this podcast. When I did analyze it, I realized they actually repeated 2 scenes, right? And so the movie opens with a shadow puppet sequence that tells the backstory of Lord Shin and how he came by gunpowder and him going after the pandas and all this stuff. And they repeat that scene later on to the end of the second act where the soothsayer is telling Poe and recounting that, and it's a very much more detailed flashback scene where they go really into it, and it's very emotional. It's a very great score behind it, but I feel like an opportunity was lost because of that previous scene. Like, it could have had much more of a emotional gut punch if they had held off on some of those informations. They could have easily just laid in the foundation of, hey, I've got gunpowder, hey, I was kicked down, by just having Gary Oldman say more lines of dialogue. And then we'll have Gary Oldman speaking more, which is always going to be awesome, right? So, but that was added in the after fact. The last 2 parts that were shot or filmed for this movie were the opening credits and the ending credits. That's why they match. But I feel like if they just gone a different direction with that and just didn't quite have that, that would have been like a reveal. But that's a storytelling aspect that I feel like is more of a literary device. Again, you pointed out they did a lot less dialogue. So if they'd had like maybe another year, like if Guillermo del Toro was able to really put his stamp of approval on and stuff like that, he probably would have pointed that out. But hey, you don't actually need this because you do it over here, and if you want this to have a lot more emotional gut punch, then take out that stuff in the beginning and have that be more of a reveal that, hey, this guy's actually responsible for taking away your parents. Whereas at the very first part of the movie, we can kind of put that together. I also would have not opened the film with him. I would have opened it with that awesome fight scene where they went and was it on a mountaintop, and they were fighting the wolves for all the men and stuff like that, and working as a team. I would open it with that, or open it with just the 2 kids with the dolls, playing with the Furious 5. Because the first scene of Poe is of him stuffing bean buns into his mouth, trying to break his own record.
Which, if you've ever had a bean bun, is nasty.
Yeah, well, actually, I haven't had a bean bun, but
you're missing nothing.
Here's the thing, that because that was the first sequence that showed Poe, they had to actually readjust and reanimate him physically so that his cheeks would match when they put all those dumplings in there, or not dumplings, but bean buns. And so like that changed the look and feel of his character. Is why he looks different from movie to movie. It's not because it's a different movie and they had more steps. It's like, oh, we can't actually animate this correctly. The physics don't work because of how we previously designed his cheeks. So we had to redesign Poe just for that one scene.
Animation, 3D animation, if you've never done it, it's a lot more complicated than you think.
Oh my god, yeah.
I have some friends who do some 3D animated work for video game companies, because we're in the Triangle, North Carolina. We're in Durham, North Carolina, where Tactical Kung Fu MMA is located, Durham, North Carolina. And there's actually a lot of video game studios located in the Triangle and Raleigh, Durham. And so there's a lot of 3D art that gets done here, and it is so much more complicated than people realize. It's not just building a computer frame and then laying skins on top of it. It's a lot more involved.
Yeah, and like I said, it's actually different from the lighting aspect. So there's 2 different, and the special effects aspect. So like you can have a scene that will have 10 different people on it, and it would just be like this one 10-second deal.
10 different people, 10 different teams of people who were doing, the lighting team and the special effects team, they're different. The lighting and the shadowing can be different depending on the program you're using. This is a lot more complicated. The magic that goes into making visual effects is just that.
Now, in the last Dragon Yawn, I talked about pose fighting style. So I want to...
Bear style.
The bear style.
Eagle.
So the new fighting style that we have in this film that I want to talk about is that of the Peacock of Lord Shen. Okay, his fighting style was actually patterned after a Chinese style. It's a Chinese mixed martial art that incorporates 3 different styles called Choi Li Foot. Okay, I could be me mispronouncing that, the Choi and the foot part. I got the Li.
Comment section, let us know.
Yeah. This is just, let us know how to pronounce. Please. Let us know how to pronounce stuff in the written word.
Yeah, there you
go.
You know,
use the written word. It lets us know how to pronounce that. But it was founded in 1836 by a guy named Chan Hung. Chan Hang. And so he, like I said, it's a mixed martial art. It incorporates Choi Gar, Li Gar, and Foot Gar. And Gar in Cantonese just means family, whereas Choi, Li, and Foot is the name of the family. So you would have like the Li family, or the Foot family, or the Choi family. In his case, it would be the Robert family. Yeah. So you,
like, imagine like today if you went to a like a boxing gym. It was Willis Boxing. That's what it is.
Pretty much.
It's the name of the family that created the style.
Yeah. And so that style has about, 150 forms. It's huge. It's all encompassing, and it has both northern and southern. I think it was really funny that I said southern went high and northern low, but whatever, right? So, but the southern style is very quick movements, the short feet. Right, and the northern style is going to have the wider stances and the more circular movements on a lot of...
We're overgeneralizing, but yeah.
Yeah, pretty much. It specifically designed, though, it was really useful for multiple combatants. Right, and one of the, like I said, Shen, his fighting style came from that, specifically the fan. There's a number of different fan forms. They got about 40 or 53 different weapons in Choi and Foot, depending on which school you go to, and there's actually a lot of schools. It's very popular, but they use the fan, and so a lot of people think the fan weapon is more for cutting, right? But that's not true. In fact, the steel fan is almost kind of a myth, really. Nobody uses that. They use just a regular wooden fan, a normal fan, and there's a lot of pokes, right? And they emphasize pressure point hitting. And so it's very cool, and they use that along with some of the bladed forms and a couple of staff forms. Now, that style has, like I said, 150 forms, so they have a lot of different movements for a staff, because sometimes a staff can also be a spear, depending on whether or not the end of it is sharp, and vice versa. So you have a lot of similar movements. And he had an interesting staff in that had a very long blade to it. And
almost kind of like a naginata, Japanese kind of.
Yeah, and so that was the weapons or the style that he had. What I find very interesting is that in all my research and reading descriptions of it, I was like, this sounds a whole lot like the martial art that I do. And so I don't know who came first, or if somebody on the internet was copying and pasting, but like
what?
Yeah,
something on the internet might need verification.
But it definitely reinforced my theory that the human body can only move in so many different ways. So if you have the same objectives, you're going to have some of the same movements, right? And just a different terminology for it and a different way of going about it. And so that's what they had here. This is more of a Chinese style of just these martial arts that do the exact same thing as the one hop kendo type stuff we do in the kaji kempo, and fighting multiple opponents and using the northern and southern. See, I did it right this time. Okay. And, so they had that aspect in it. So that's the fighting style that he use. Did you do any? Do you know anything about Choi Lee Foot?
Choi Lee Foot, no, mostly just from the lineage of the individual schools, the Choi, the Lee, and the Foot. Just that how they evolved separately, but they were always kind of connected. It was like the three major schools in this one province in China for multiple generations.
Yeah.
And then because it was like the Shan Huang, anyway, he learned
I can't pronounce his name.
one style from his father and one style from his uncle, and then one style from like his uncle's best friend or something. And so it's the three styles were always kind of related. I think it may have been very comparable to something like Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, Nihon Jiu-Jitsu, and wrestling, in that they get along.
Yeah, I mean, and like I said, the human body can only move in so many different ways. So a lot of these techniques that you would see with one weapon translate very well to another weapon, or just no weapon at all. I mean, your fists, your hands can be a weapon. And so in Chinese Kung Fu, right, you can definitely use a lot of stuff as a weapon, okay? In one scene, Poe tried to use a hat, which could have been really effective if he wasn't like a mile away.
Oh man,
that was such a funny scene.
I didn't understand like why he wanted the hat, and then like, oh, that's what he's gonna do with the hat. Oh, that didn't work at all.
Not one bit.
Man.
Well, they laid the foundation though, as far as like him coming up with plans that don't actually work, like him trying to cook rice in the stomach by drinking boiling water.
I tried that with mac and cheese once.
Did you really?
Yeah.
That didn't work.
No, it didn't.
It doesn't ever work. It's such a bad idea. And so
tell me that now.
Yeah. But like I said, very good film, and I like it a lot. I did, for this Dragon On again, I watched the commentary, which definitely solidified why I hate commentary. And it's
we appreciate your sacrifice.
I know, it was this time was a chore, because the director was first-time director. I understand this. So the audience, I think her audience was not so much. She was going for a particular type of person. She was going for what she liked, and she is a visual storyteller. And so the visuals are amazing. Let's not get that wrong. But in the commentary, you can kind of see this because the directors from the first film, they talked very much about, why they did something, and they highlighted all these people who did all these amazing things. Whereas in this one, she talks about like, here's this thing that I did. Here's here's the thing that I did, and they talked about stuff that they did. They don't talk about the why they did it, other than like, oh, this looks cool, and I'm kind of like, yeah, I get that. It would look cool when you weren't talking about it, right? But they also use, and this is my only gripe, is that the terminology that they use, because I'm a film geek, I can understand them, right? But they use a lot of terms that are very much the film industry, that if you didn't know as much as I do, then you were like, I have no idea what that is. And coming from having taught kids, I know that kids can be very literal with things they don't, or things that they do understand, right? And so you can't use terminology that they don't understand, because I learned this a long time ago. I was trying to get a little girl to kick a bag with her shin. And I was like, use your shin, use your shin. And at one point, she just got all flustered, threw her hands up in the air, was like, what the shin? And I was like, oh, right, you're 6. And I'm old. All right, and so I was like, here's a part of your leg that you need to kick with. And so that just changed my terminology. So you can't use the terminology, I think, that they did, but they were all putting together, talking amongst themselves. And so I feel like if Joe Schmo don't know the lingo, then talking shop about Poe is a no-go. For real, yo.
And on that note,
my
Kung Fu...
gang sign.
Good
So
man.
I'm part of the Bull Clan.
Why am I friends with you?
Because we live long and prosper, because our enemies, they live short and suffer.
That was pretty good. I like that.
Thank you.
So
we're at more of the Mike Tyson clan down on Rope-a-Dope Drive. They keep biting our ears off.
This just took a turn that I was not prepared for.
I know.
So, Kung Fu Panda 2. Not as good as Kung Fu Panda 1, but definitely a worthy successor. Definitely worth watching, and definitely worth checking out. And if you are interested in any of the styles or fun techniques that you saw in the film, you should definitely come check out Tactical Kung Fu and MMA in Durham, North Carolina, and we will help you out.
Totally. All right. And if you're interested in something good to read, check out his website. What is it again?
TeachTheSky.com.
Yes. Check out his website. Check out the Tactical Kung Fu website, tkfmma.
Links are below.
Okay. Or you can look at us on Facebook, Facebook.com/tkfmma. Or you can find us on Twitter, tkfmma. Or Instagram, tkfmma. Or subscribe to this channel.
Also true.
Yes.
And click the bell button as... Where's my hand? There we go.
Yeah,
click the bell button right down there, right about there, and you will get notifications every time a new episode goes up, whether it's a Dragon Yawn, whether it's a Kung Facts, whether it's anything else. Subscribe to stay notified.
Right, and so the thing is, you have to subscribe to get that little bell, because I didn't see it the first time.
Okay,
yeah, so yeah, I was wondering about that too. That first one, and then I was like, "Where's the bell? Where's the bell?" And then I was like, "Oh, there's the bell. You have to subscribe." So subscribe.
Yes. And we'll see you next weekish.
Well, next time I do one of these things,
yeah,
hey, that's why you should subscribe.
Exactly.
Yes. Yeah, so all right, guys, you have a good day.
Take care.
Bye.